All right, so let's start talking about elections and campaigns. So essentially, in this PowerPoint, what you're going to see is a lot of information about the steps and the laws related to elections and campaigns, mostly as it pertains to president, but understand there are certain rules for state and local elections as well. All right, so big thing, types of elections. First, primary elections. We'll talk a lot more about them when we get into presidential parties and political parties and elections like that. But the idea about primary is to narrow the field of potential candidates for a general election. A general election is based the actual election for the office. So in any given set of elections, you can potentially have two. So you can have the party elections, which is the primaries or caucuses, where we try to pick out who will be the candidate. Then you have the general election where the person is actually elected to office. And then there are two kinds of special elections. One is called a runoff. A runoff is basically held to determine if there's a winner when no one gets a majority. So let's say it was for governor of North Carolina, and there's three people running. And let's say like this past year was Cooper, McCrory, and then let's throw in another third party, call them Party X. Let's say Party X and McCrory got a total of 60% of the vote. Let's say it was 30-30, and then you had Cooper get 40% of the vote. Well, no one then would get a majority. So that would mean the two top vote getters, in this case, let's make it a little easier. Let's make it 40-20 for McCrory and Party X. So Party X gets 20, McCrory gets 40, and Cooper also got 40. That would mean that McCrory and Cooper would then go to a separate new election between each other, and that way it would be almost guaranteed that one person would have a majority of votes over the other. It's a way to basically it's almost like a tiebreaker kind of election. That's how it basically works. And then there's a recall. This is used in other states, but not North Carolina. This is a special election just to remove someone from office. The most famous example was Gray Davis in California being recalled, and then he was then replaced by a general election by a guy named Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that's how he became governor of California for 2 terms. All right, now here's 2 other special kind of elections called initiatives and referendums. These are issue elections. They're not really electing anybody. They're really just balloting and deciding whether or not they want to pass a law. Now, typically, we already talked about how a law gets passed. Typically, it goes to the legislative branch, signed by the executive at the state level and at the federal national level. An initiative is a law that starts with a petition by citizens and then is voted on by the population. We don't do this in NC. However, in North Carolina, we do constitutional amendments by referendum. The most famous one would be the gay marriage ban in North Carolina, done by constitutional amendment. So we have on our constitutional in our Constitution for the North Carolina State Constitution a ban on gay marriage. That was a result of a referendum where voters got to actually vote to approve or disapprove of that particular amendment. So that is a referendum. Now we go on to presidential elections. All right, there's 3 steps to a presidential election. That's nomination, the campaign, and then the final vote. The nomination, campaigning can start a year. Now it's really almost 2 years before the actual presidential election happens. Now the primaries determine who the nominee will be for whichever party you're in. So if you're Green Party, Republican Party, Democrat Party, for the primary process, that's the election process to determine who will be your candidate. Then you go to the National Convention, they rally party members together, and then they have their general campaign after that convention that decides who the nominees will be. Campaigning can take the place of speeches, like the Make America Great Again rallies of Donald Trump, where they just rally after rally after rally, speech after speech, TV commercial, news conferences. They can face each other in presidential debates, which are very famous and get a lot of TV coverage. All right, now we got to talk about the Electoral College. So the candidate who wins the popular vote of each state receives all that state's electoral votes. So that's what we talked earlier in the semester about how this was a constitutional compromise. Instead of having direct elections or a direct democracy or a purely representative democracy, this is kind of that middle ground. So here's what happens. Electors cast their votes in December. Remember, the election will be in November. And then the votes are counted in January. A candidate has to get 270 votes out of the total of 538 to win the Electoral College and therefore win the election. Here's the big criticism. States with a whole lot of electors have way too much influence over the elections, and candidates who lose popular vote can still win the election. That happened this past time. Trump did not win the popular vote, But then again, that's not how you win the election. You don't win by popular vote. You win by electoral votes. Now, here's the rule under state statute in North Carolina. A vote for the candidates for president and vice president named on the ballot is a vote for the electors of the party or unaffiliated candidate. So in North Carolina, technically, when whoever wins the majority of the popular vote in North Carolina, you're voting for that party. You're not even voting technically for the candidate. You're voting for the party. That's who will get it. So in theory, North Carolina, if you were to let's say Trump and Pence won North Carolina, and the next day they both got struck by lightning and they were gone. Technically, the electors are bound to vote for the party of the winning team. Very strange situation. But in most states, in a lot of states, it's actually a crime for the elector to not vote for the party that they've been assigned to vote for. So the electors don't really have much choice anymore. Once you win the popular vote in that state, those electors are chosen and they have to vote for that party. And this is the current electoral map. North Carolina has 15 15 electoral votes. California and Texas, obviously the two big ones. You got California 55, Texas 34. They have a lot of power, although typically they tend to vote Democrat and California Republican in Texas for like the last 30, 40 years. Here's the 2000 presidential election, and there's 2008. So you see some big switches happening. North Carolina, Virginia. The reason why North Carolina is now considered a swing state is because of the transfer from 2000 to 2008. It is now, and then in 2008, it went for Obama, Democrat. Then in 2012, it went for, I just have a brain fart. I don't remember his name anymore. Oh, gosh, it was going to be, how can I not remember this guy's name? He was on the campaign trail. Paul Ryan was his vice presidential candidate. Gosh, what is his name? He was governor of Massachusetts. I should have just had a slide up there. I wouldn't have to worry about forgetting. All right, so it went McCain in 2008, and then you had Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney ran for the RNC during 2012. Gosh, how could I forget that? That was so bad. Well, here's the rundown. So in 2008, Obama wins North Carolina. In 2012, Mitt Romney wins North Carolina, and then now in 2016, Trump has won North Carolina. So we've had some switching go back and forth, which means we are now a swing state, which is why so much traffic comes through here during presidential elections, because it can go both ways. All right, so here is a list of basically how the Electoral College reflects the popular vote. So in 76, it was pretty close. Then when Reagan won, he only won by a very small percentage. He got 50.7% of the popular vote. He barely got a majority of the popular vote. But that translates into 90% of electoral votes. So that's how a winner-take-all system kind of works here. So you have even if you win a state by one single vote, you get all the electoral votes for that state. It's winner-take-all. That's why you get that big disparity in 84. And it kind of narrows down after that. And you got George W. Bush in 04, and then you got the popular vote being unresponsive to the electoral vote. So in 2000, when George W. Bush won the first time, his popular vote percentage was actually below half. In that case, Al Gore actually won the popular vote but lost the election. All right, so to break this up a little bit, let's do some corny jokes. All right, I bought some shoes from a drug dealer. I don't know what they were laced with, but I've been tripping all day. Come on, that was great, right? Awesome. All right, I told my wife she drew her eyebrows way too high. She seemed surprised. That's not my wife. All right, more bad jokes. All right, so let me think of one. They're also corny. What do you call a nun in a wheelchair? Virgin Mobile. Yeah? Any laughs about that? No? All right. What happens when a cow jumps over a barbed wire fence? Utter destruction. Great? Corny? Awesome? Oh, well, y'all have no taste. All right, so on to paying for elections. So as you can imagine, these elections have a huge political impact in politics and economics and money and everything else. So guess what? People spend a lot of money to get elected or to get their guy elected or to get the person they like elected. All right, so running for office, it takes a huge amount of money. Like when I say huge, I mean it's billions of dollars at the federal level now. So this is the breakdown of the cost of various federal election campaigns. So in 2000, $3 billion for the presidency and all the congressional elections. So when you add them all together, $3 billion. In 2004, $3.9 billion. Now it's 2016. The most recent estimates are $6.8 billion being spent for the presidency and congressional elections, so all the federal offices. Huge increase. Lots and lots of money here. It's a big section of the economy during those years. And thousands of campaign workers who are paid work to get their presidential candidate elected, the guy they like. All right, so on to financing. Most campaign funding comes from private sources, so individuals, corporations, interest groups. This is called hard money. Hard money is when someone says, I'm going to donate money to this candidate to be used by this candidate. It goes straight to them. Now, here's the rules. This is not in your notes, but this is just good to know, just because you have the number amounts ready to go and just know why these numbers are the way they are. Individuals can give $2,300 per election to any candidate. That also means you can give $2,300 to candidate A and candidate B, who is fighting candidate A. You can technically donate to both parties if you want to, or both candidates if you want to, who are opposed to each other in an election. Nothing stopping you from doing that. An individual can donate $28,000 to a national party committee. So that's per calendar year. So basically, they can donate every year $28,000 to a party. $10,000 to each state and local party committee. So if you have a national party, $28,000. Then each state/local party committee gets $10,000. So that's another $10,000 times 50 states that you can add. You can put more money into. And then $65,000 per year to all PACs and parties. And that might be a little different now, but when this PowerPoint was made, $65,000 was pretty much the total you give to a PAC. Now that has changed since. It's now unlimited contributions to PACs for certain things. All right, some worry that candidates feel like they owe special favors to those who contribute to their campaigns, much like the spoil system back with Andrew Jackson and all that fun stuff you'll learn more about in US 1. But the big issue is, is this people buying favors from the candidates that win? Could somebody donate $1 million to Hillary Clinton and then donate $1 million to Trump and then get a favor from either one who wins? That's the fear. That's the negative moral hazard kind of argument to financing campaigns. Now, Presidential Election Campaign Fund. Taxpayers can contribute $3 by checking a box on their tax form. Candidates qualify for these funds if they raise $100,000 on their own. So basically, there is actually a separate fund just for, it's like a neutral fund, so there's no like favoritism involved with it, where basically you can donate $3, and most people don't do it, and if you reach a certain threshold in money raising by yourself, you can then access those presidential election campaign funds, but it's not that much money relative to how much other money gets spent on election campaigns. But that was essentially an attempt to mitigate the impact of people trying to get favors by donating money. All right. Federal Election Campaign Finance Act. This is from 1971, and it requires disclosure of sources of contributions. Now, there's a lot of reasons why you want disclosures. You might want disclosures to make sure that criminals or like the mafia or somebody else isn't donating money. It's also a way to make sure that foreign powers like China aren't donating money into our presidential elections in the U.S. because we don't like the idea of doing that. Now, the Supreme Court ruled that limiting how much a candidate could spend on their campaigns was a violation of free speech. So there is a limit on how much a candidate could spend. There used to be a limit on how much a candidate. So like with Donald Trump running for president, before 1976, there were laws in the books that said Donald Trump cannot spend more than blankety blankety blank on his own campaign. In 1976, they overruled that, said you are allowed as a candidate to spend every dime you have if you really want to on your presidential campaign or any campaign for that matter. All right, so we've talked about hard money. Now let's talk about soft money. Soft money is when someone donates dollar bills to a political party. Now, it's not designated. It's not going to go to any particular candidate, but basically the party raises that money and then spends it out. And they're supposed to spend on like general purposes and expenses, things like setting up party offices in localities and states to help get their guy elected. It's not meant to be just like a middleman where you donate soft money and then that money goes straight to a candidate's campaign. The idea is you're basically running the party apparatus to basically support campaign people and support different elected officials. Then you have the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002. Now, it's abbreviated BICRA sometimes, and it's also called McCain-Feingold. All right. It prohibited the unregulated contributions of soft money to national political parties. It also doubled the contribution limit of hard money from $1,000 to $2,000 per election cycle. All right, now here's a new case. New is in like the last 20 years, called Citizens United versus FEC. Essentially, Citizens United said this: monetary donations is a form of political speech protected by the First Amendment. So when I donate money as a person, I am engaging in speech. I'm saying I support you with my $1 bill. So unlimited money donations. However, the government still has an interest in knowing where money comes from. So I still have to disclose who I am donating that money out. So that's still so there are still disclosure requirements. And finally, we're going to see how this is where we start seeing the term super PAC come in, where people are donating all this money into these corporations, or what we call political action committees, whose sole purpose is to campaign for a special interest group or for a candidate. Here's the rules for political action committees. Political action committees can give $5,000 per campaign, $15,000 to a national committee for like a party, so the RNC or the DNC, and $5,000 to a state or local party. Now, here's the kicker. That's how the political action committee can donate directly to party members or candidates for office. That's how they take care of that. On the other hand, a political action committee has unlimited abilities to spend money on their own behalf. So let's say I want to get Donald Trump elected. So I'm going to start a political action committee to do that. I'm not allowed to talk to Donald Trump. I'm not allowed to give money to Donald Trump outside of this $5,000, $15,000, and $5,000 per year to the party. But I can do lots of things like advertise, buy time on TV and commercials to basically just make Donald Trump look great, according to me. And that's why you sometimes see during election season, at the very end of certain ads, like the phrase, "This ad is not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee." That's all that means. That is some political action committee or a PAC going out on their own and advertising on behalf of a candidate, even though there's no communication. This is not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Basically saying that when I make an ad for Donald Trump saying, "Hey, Donald Trump's great," and then it says, "This ad is not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee." All that's saying is that I haven't talked to Donald Trump about it. We have not colluded and talked about it, because that would be a violation of election law. That's how they get around. That's how there is unlimited amount of money coming in to basically get candidates elected. It's kind of a wink and a nod. I'm going to campaign for you. I just can't talk about it with you. So I'm going to spend millions of dollars to make you look great on TV, but I just can't talk to you directly about it. It's a lot of back and forth about the nature of political action committees and Citizens United unlimited giving or contributions that can go into political action committees. It's changed the way elections are funded and the power and influence of big business, who can donate now unlimited amounts of money to make sure that their favorite guy gets elected. It's both positive and negative. It's free speech oriented, but it gives a lot of power to corporations. There's a lot of back and forth on it. Critics think that wealthy donors may receive special favors than when compared to average citizens. It also gives corporate interest. So if you're a big corporation like Google can now donate a whole bunch of money to a campaign. Mr. Helms can't do that. Mr. Helms is not Google, but I'm still a citizen. And technically, when you really get down to it, a corporation is not a person. They can't vote, but they can still give money. And the base for this, guys, is that whole issue, again, the First Amendment, the right of association. A corporation is technically an association of people. A corporation is made up of shares. Shares are purchased by people. That's how we associate. If I were to buy one share of Google, I am now a shareholder along with all other Google shareholders, and our money is going in some respects to help a certain candidate get elected through Super PAC and through donations. It technically is free speech. It's just you got to follow like 3 lines of logic to get there. Congress continues to debate plans to reform campaign finance, but a lot of lawmakers are hesitant to change the rules because, think about their lawmakers. They might have gotten in their office through election finance and people donating to their campaign. They don't want to limit that because then they might not get in the next time if they can't use the money that was given to them. And that's it, guys. Just go ahead and fill the notes in and make sure you do the assignment on the board that I may or may not have for you when you finish this lecture.